Samuel Finley Breese Morse was best known as Samuel Morse and was born April 27, 1791 in Charlestown, Massachusetts. Samuel was an accomplished painter before he invented the telegraph in high school and colleges. His parents were determined to have him in the highest education, but Samuel never wanted to do that. He wanted to pursue his dream as a professional painter. Samuel ended up getting married and had 3 children. In between the years of 1825 and 1835, he entered the grieving period, in which his wife and his father passed away. During this time, Morse formed a partnership with Alfred Vail, another inventor, who helped him create the Morse code. Later, he met an inventor called Charles Thomas Jackson and got into a discussion about electromagnetic impulse and was intrigued. Morse began to study up about this, and the topic was created, the electric telegraph.
Morse code led to the invention of the telegraph that was used for a little while. But then Samuel Morse had a new invention in mind, the electric telegraph. At this time, the only way to send communication like this was the U.S. Postal Service. When people heard about this, they were very excited. And so he decided to try and make it happen.
Morse code is a form of communication using dots and dashes without using sound or physical involvement. Morse code was created during the early 1800s by Samuel Morse and his friend Alfred Bell. Morse code impacted communication because nothing like this has ever been discovered before. The first telegraphic message ever sent came from the Bible. What hath God wrought? Morse code was a medium for other inventions, such as electric telegraph, which came about in the mid-1800s. In the middle of the 1800s, the electric telegraph was put into trial. The first attempts to use electric telegraph were made by the British Navy in the Crimean War in 1854. The first attempt was a failure because it was poor because of its capabilities, and then was not widely used after this. After 3 years, the electric telegraph was discovered during the American Civil War. During this time, the Morse code was published on flags to send visual signals. Several years after the Civil War, the U.S. Navy used Morse code to communicate. The electric telegraph was used to communicate from land to sea. This revolutionized the communication because before it was very hard to communicate from land to sea, and this made it a lot easier for ship captains.
After the First World War, Morse code and the electric telegraph was booming. Everyone wanted their hand in sending telegraphs. Alterations were made over time so the electric telegraph could be more sufficient. In the early 19th century, the electric telegraph went over the Atlantic Ocean. This was a big achievement. There were such as 40 telegraph lines over the Atlantic Ocean by 1940. But after the Second World War, the usage of electric telegraph slowly stopped, for there was no need for them at this time.
The electric telegraph transformed how wars were fought and won, and how journalists and newspapers conducted business. Rather than taking weeks to be delivered by horse and carriage, it was fast and sufficient. Morse code and the electric telegraph were the first ever ways to communicate wirelessly. And this, what you could say, is the very start of the inventions that we now have today to communicate. Without these two inventions, we couldn't have some of the forms of communication we have now.